So now I'm very happy to hand over to Helen and Delyth.
Rue, thank you very much for your introduction, and thank you to all of us for joining us today for this lunchtime webinar on how eco-churches count on nature and are taking action all year round. I'm Helen Stephens. I'm the Church Relations Manager at A Rocha UK, where I've overseen the eco-church programme for about 7.5 years. And I'm joined today by Delyth Higgins, who is our eco-church officer in Wales, and will bring some lovely Welsh insights today. So over the next 45-50 minutes, we're hoping to finish with some time for questions. We're going to cover who we are at A Rocha UK, an overview of eco-church and the land and nature category in particular. And then we're going to share a few stories from churches across Wales and England. Maybe you're new to Churches Count on Nature, or you haven't stopped to think about the name of it before. But it's a recognition that we all need nature in our lives. And as much as we might be pausing this week to count nature, to identify and understand what's on our doorstep, quite literally what's on our church's doorstep, hopefully this will inspire a deeper love for nature and for all of God's earth. You probably don't need me to tell you how much nature is under threat. 1 in 6 species in the UK are threatened with extinction. And the threat to nature is mostly from us. And we think there's a huge role that we can play in our churches and our wider communities to help reverse some of the direst trends. And this is what A Rocha is really about. A Rocha, it's a slightly strange name, is Portuguese for the rock. And that reflects the origins of the international A Rocha family in a field study centre in the Algarve on the Alvor estuary, where it started in Portugal back in 1982. And A Rocha in the UK, which started in the early 2000s in Southall, we're now part of a worldwide family of A Rocha organisations in about 20 countries around the world. And we're all committed to conservation as an expression of Christian mission. So as it says, we're a Christian charity working to equip Christians and churches to protect and restore the natural world through inspiring and equipping individuals and families, churches and church leaders, and building partnerships and managing land for people and for nature. And we do this through our 3 main programmes. We have our Partners in Action network, which is a network of Christian landowners and managers across the country who work together in practical ways to improve the biodiversity of their land, address climate change, and make a difference to nature restoration. And then our Wild Christian programme is a community of individuals and households enjoying and learning about nature together, taking practical action in homes and communities, and joining our voices behind campaigns, for example, to have national impact. And then finally, and what we're here to talk about the most today, is EcoChurch, a learning community of churches across England and Wales, open to all denominations, with resources and awards for progress. And just to say, we don't run EcoChurch in Scotland and Ireland, purely because there's something called Eco Congregation that runs in those countries. But we work in partnership with them. But EcoChurch is specifically for churches in England and Wales. So it was launched nearly 10 years ago as a scheme to mobilise churches to care for God's earth. And it's become a real community of learning and engagement, and is part of a bigger movement of the church, the whole church, taking creation care seriously and beginning to integrate it as a core part of mission. So there's an EcoChurch survey I'll say a bit more about in a minute, with 5 foundational categories covering all of church life and providing a framework for action. And it's always been about encouraging churches to record what they're already doing, to do what they can, reflect on the further steps that they can take, and to keep going. And the awards serve as a great way of churches pausing to celebrate, sharing together, and finding the motivation to carry on what can sometimes be quite hard work, let's be honest, but also hopefully full of joy. There are actually over 8,500 registered churches. I just checked the numbers today, and we're just over an 8,500. And more than 4,000 of those churches have got at least a bronze award, with 90 plus, actually very nearly 100 churches at gold. But of course, it's not just about the numbers, and the awards are not an end in themselves. While it's great to achieve an award, and who doesn't love an award, it's really, they are an important marker of progress and a cause for celebration. But participating in EcoChurch is about embedding caring for the earth across every aspect of church life. And that's for whatever context of church that you're in. So we have a very diverse church base. We've got churches from a broad variety of traditions with over 20 denominations represented. We've got cathedrals, Quaker meeting houses, expressions of church that meet mainly outdoors or indeed online. And all of these bring enormous breadth and richness, as well as a challenge for us to try and have a survey that works for everyone. But it is designed to be utilised by churches from all backgrounds. In the last few days, just looking through the registrations, we've had registrations from a United Reformed Church, a Salvation Army Church, Church of England ones from across 7 different dioceses, and a chapel in Bridgend. So there really is a lot of lovely diversity there. The survey recognises that we face twin crises. In fact, people talk about us being in a time of polycrisis. There are so many challenges in our world. You, again, don't need me to tell you, but we're focused particularly on climate change and the loss of nature. And these are the themes threaded through the survey. And then even if not explicitly referenced, of course, there are many other environmental issues that we face and that we can be taking action on in our churches. There's now a real urgency about this work. You know, we're coming up to having been running EcoChurch for 10 years by next January. And we're getting an enormous breadth of churches, as I've mentioned. But we also want to ensure that we're taking the most impactful actions. So the survey now aligns more to reducing carbon and protecting nature. It goes into detail about practice and aligning closely with the ambitions that different denominations have to reduce carbon, but as well as being forward thinking in protecting nature and increasingly anticipating a shift towards climate resilience in the face of the climate change that we are already facing. I mean, look, we've been reflecting on the weather today, and let's be honest, it's June and we don't quite know what we're going to get. So, of course, there is an urgency. And then just briefly, we really encourage churches to own the survey for themselves. It's designed to be used in a local context with integrity and aligned with the overall spirit of the questions. People ask us, you haven't got a question on this, that, and the other. The survey would be twice its length, but, please answer the questions in your context, and of course do more than the questions are presenting. We're encouraging churches to make a commitment as well, and this is now at the start of every category. I'll say a bit more in a minute. They're not compulsory questions. None of the questions are compulsory. It's for you to sort of choose your pathway through it. But if you start with these commitment questions and answer those positively, then you will get your church off to a really good start in terms of laying the foundations. So get caring for the earth in our mission action plans, in our vision statements. And then please make use of additional comments, because we love to know what's going on, and it might help to explain how you've interpreted a question, which we really need to understand a bit more when you come to apply for gold, if you come to apply for gold, but have that ambition. So let me say a little bit about the categories. They're all mutually reinforcing. The more that we learn about God, the maker and sustainer of the universe, no less, who we are and whose we are, that we're a part of creation, not separate from it, the more that we can be inspired and encouraged to care for this earth and walk in Jesus's footsteps. His challenge to the money changers in the temple has no less resonance and meaning in how we use and manage our church buildings today. Where does our energy come from, and is it harming nature and humanity in the process? Then the ways that we are taking an action in our churches through community and global engagement, how we're speaking up, managing our finances, transport and waste, and also influencing our personal lives, the lifestyle category of eco-church, and vice versa. Is there, and how is there, a thread of caring for the whole world, for nature, as far as we can from where we are across our church and our lives? So coming to the worship and teaching category then, fundamental to the whole of eco-church and our mission at A Rocha UK, and I've already said it really, but it's our belief in a God who loves the earth he created and calls us to care for it. And we see that as part of our worship and witness. So this category is really foundational. If we acknowledge what we're doing to our world, the loss of species, the loss of human life, it links us to lament in our worship and hopefully encourages us to work in partnership with our communities from local to national and global action. While there are multiple questions along the themes that you can see here on the slide, I want to emphasize an intentionality that runs throughout eco-church about how taking action to address both the climate and nature crises, so interlinked, is integral to our faith, life and worship. I mean, I'm repeating what I've already said really, but it's perhaps the biggest change that we've made over the last 12 months. So hence this very first question about commitment. We recognise that the earth is in crisis and that responding is an integral part of who we are and that we're committed to doing so. So this church, St Mary Magdalene, that has got a silver award this year, they've addressed it by incorporating the protection of creation and the environment right there in their mission action plan. And then there are questions in this category about recognising a rhythm of caring for creation throughout the year, worshipping outdoors and through different expressions such as Messy Church Goes Wild or contemplative prayer walks. It doesn't have to be worship in a traditional sense, or however you might envisage it. There will be myriad other ways that churches are engaging with this. And then buildings and energy is the next category. Sorry, I've just noticed a comment in the that somebody's not seeing the slides, but I will carry on. Buildings and energy. So there are 3 pathways through the buildings category to choose from cathedrals and churches that are used regularly to churches without their own building that maybe meet in rented spaces, or indeed churches that meet outdoors or online that don't have a building at all. We've got questions. We've got a framework that we hope will help. Many of the questions in this category relate more to the maintenance and fabric of the buildings and the actions that we might take to reduce our energy footprint, which on the face of it may seem to be less about nature, but of course how we manage our buildings, the resources that we use, the waste we generate, they all have massive implications for nature. And while there aren't specific questions on this, our buildings are important havens for nature, from the spiders that some of us may choose to overlook to the birds such as swifts nesting under the eaves, an increasing number of cathedrals in particular that have peregrine falcons nesting on their roofs. And then a growing area of focus is also developing a climate resilience plan for whatever climate-related risks we face, from flooding to extreme heat. And of course, nature is impacted by these events too. I think my overall encouragement here is not to see our buildings as separate from or of no consequence to the spaces that we might also want to create for nature. The whole of our church estate can impact nature positively, just as we can through the choices that we make in our wider lives. And then coming on to land and nature, the category that on the face of it by the name, you'd think has the most ways of impacting nature. There are now 2 pathways through this category for every type of church, whether you have land or not. We used to have churches answering no to land, but even a tiny perimeter can be managed for nature, and we'll share some stories later to illustrate this. And even if you don't have any land at all, there's so much land in our communities that needs cared for. So a church starting with eco-church needs to acknowledge, again, the climate and nature crises, and then plan how to manage their land and or community land for nature and people. I'm going to briefly outline the other 2 categories before handing over to Delyth, who will explain more in particular around the themes here of biodiversity and monitoring and people. But coming on to community and global engagement, the climate and nature crises are profoundly unjust, with the most devastating impacts affecting the poor and vulnerable who've done the least to cause the crisis. If you haven't seen David Attenborough's Ocean film, well, one, I'd recommend it, but it also really highlights the injustices of the way that we manage our seas and the coastal, often very vulnerable coastal communities being impacted by this. And it applies as much in our own country as it does across the wider world. It's often the poorest, the most disadvantaged, who have the least access to nature and green spaces, who are most affected by air pollution and so on. And we were really conscious, redoing this survey last year, of the importance of making our green spaces accessible to everyone. So I just want to shout out to another webinar happening on Friday called Open to All, which I think sounds absolutely excellent. So if you've got a chance, come along to that one. We're called to love our neighbour, and so it's our responsibility to them and the places where they live, that's our nature neighbours as well as our human ones, to demonstrate this, the love for people and nature that we have, that God has, by advocating for a more just world. While there's much that we can do as a church body, our impact will be even greater when we work with others to bring about local and global change. So you'll find questions in here about engaging and working with others. It might start at the level of having conversations and getting others on board, just pausing to have conversations to find out what it is that really matters to people, which takes time to do, can provide such a way in to encouraging others to get on board with this sort of work. And then there are so many ways that we can take action, from attending our MP surgery to a prayer vigil, working with local conservation groups. I think I noticed someone in the chat today from one of the wildlife trusts, to working with park groups, to have a local Friends of Park group here that organises dawn choruses and litter picks and so on, to caring for God's Acre, of course, to organising events and taking part in weeks like this, such as Churches Count on Nature and Great Big Green Week, which is also happening this week. And there's a prime opportunity coming up on Wednesday, the 9th of July. Thousands of people from every corner of the UK are going to come to Westminster to tell our MPs that this is a moment for leadership. We want them to protect what matters most: our health, our nature, our communities, our climate, and our future. So there are 3 calls for bold and practical action, including restoring nature to create a safer, healthier future. Go onto the Climate Coalition website if you want to find out more about that. And we're intending to be there, but we don't have a meeting place yet. So that's the 9th of July. And then finally, but by no means least, our lifestyle, how we live our daily lives, especially those of us in Western countries, has a massive impact on nature and the planet. And in our churches, we can signpost resources, ideas, eco tips, and not tell, but encourage one another as part of our ongoing discipleship. So there are questions here about our carbon footprints and our personal choices, from the food we eat to how we use our money. Any of the questions in this category build on the actions that we may already be taking in our churches, and you may see some overlap with community and global in particular. Well, the things that we're then doing in our churches, we can share through our newsletters and through events to encourage and influence people to take similar actions at home, and vice versa. There's 101 great ideas out there. Well, I'm going to pause now and hand over to Delyth, who's going to take us on a little bit more of a deep dive on the land and nature category. So Delyth, handing over to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Helen. Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, I'm going to have a bit of more of a focus on the land and nature category. And as Helen alluded to earlier, there's 2 pathways through this survey category. So pathway 1 is for churches which own or manage land, such as a garden, a churchyard, or a burial ground. And pathway 2 is for churches with very limited land, maybe just a paved car park, a perimeter, or other hard standing areas, and for churches that do not own or manage any land. This pathway asks you to consider your own small amount of land, if you have any, and also how you can have an influence on land managed by others. So you choose the pathway that best suits your setting. For most churches, this will be straightforward. In a few cases, it may be worth exploring both pathways before settling on which one is the best for your situation. But regardless of which pathway you choose, the survey includes the following themes, and they are very much linked with each other and are complementary to one another. So the first one is biodiversity. Biodiversity refers to the variety of all living things on Earth and how they fit together in the web of life. God created an abundant Earth, teeming with life, and creation itself responds to its creator. But biodiversity is also essential for our survival, providing food crops, soil microbes for good soil health and fertility, clean air and water, and countless other benefits, including a positive connection between nature and mental well-being. So whatever the area of outside land a church has, even a car park or a perimeter strip of land, it can be managed to improve biodiversity as a space for both nature and people. Pots, hanging baskets and window boxes not only look cheerful and welcoming, but can also contain flowers offering pollen, seed-bearing plants and small-bearing fruits, for example, strawberries or tomatoes. Any outside space like this, however small, can become a habitat for wildlife. If you don't have any land, then you can explore how your buildings can also be a habitat for nature. Walls, fences and trees can offer vertical habitats and nesting places. For example, you could install bat and bird boxes, create solitary bee nest boxes, and grow climbing plants up walls or fences. The second theme is monitoring and citizen science. It's very hard to protect wildlife if you don't know much about it. Citizen science projects are great and an often fun way to learn more about our wonderful wildlife at the same time as helping to protect it. This Church's Count on Nature initiative is an example of exactly that. An opportunity to invite people into your churchyard to look for and record the plants and animal species they encounter. Recording and submitting what you see using the iNaturalist app is highly recommended so that you can assist with tracking different species and help keep an accurate record of where they appear and how they are doing. Other wildlife counts take place at various times during the year that you can either get involved in as a church or encourage individuals and families to do so at home. The last theme here is that of people. We want to see as many people as possible accessing nature and enjoying it. So churches could ask themselves, how can we encourage the space around our church to be a place where people can access and enjoy, nurture and protect God's beautiful earth? If you don't own land, then look for opportunities to engage the local community or work in partnership with other organisations, as has been mentioned, community groups or local councils to help manage their land. Groups are often looking for additional help. We also encourage you to provide opportunities for your congregation to get outside and spend time enjoying events and activities in nature. This could be, for example, through church services or children's or youth activities, nature walks, picnics, or conservation volunteering, or anything else. A Rocha UK's Target 25 project highlights vulnerable species across the UK and aims to help a range of declining species, taxonomic groups and threatened habitats. This includes hedgehogs, butterflies and hedgerows. We would love for more churches to be involved and adopt some of these species or habitats, depending on your location and context. This would help build their knowledge about nature and focus the local action. Churches can help places and species that are struggling with the effects of climate change, habitat loss and pollution. There's one thing that we always find really powerful when we're communicating about EcoChurch, and that is to hear from and about those who are already doing it. So for the next few minutes, that's what we're going to do to help inspire you. We're going to hear from some churches. The first one I'm going to mention is St Peter's Church in Llanbedr, Dyffryn Clwyd. It is located in a small rural community just outside Ruthin in North East Wales. It was built in 1862 when the old medieval church on the hill overlooking the Vale became a ruin. They have a fairly extensive plot of land in the form of a churchyard, and their eco-church journey started during the COVID lockdown. And the vicar, I'm reading the vicar's words now. He said, during this time in Llanbedr, we noticed that people walking the circuit around the village were finding the ruins of the old church and passing through the churchyard of St. Peter's. With time on our hands, we began to clear the overgrown churchyard, and as we did, God both brought forth beauty in wildflowers and the song of returning birds. We discovered that although our churchyards contain our dead, they do not need to be dead places, but can rather be teeming with life. And as people stopped to pause on their way through, we found that they responded, finding peace and solace within creation. We've continued to develop our outdoor space. This included space for outdoor worship when we were not allowed to meet inside. We began a wild church. Our youth group also began to gather outside around a fire pit. As these groups grew, so they brought ideas and began to shape our churchyard, creating flower beds and a labyrinth planted with lavender, recycling pallets for seating, and much more. Through our wild church, inviting the local primary school and various community events, we have created many areas in the churchyard to encourage native wildlife and have been awarded the Bee Friendly award from the Welsh Government. We have raised the cut-in height in the areas where we do mow to encourage wildflowers. We have bat boxes, bird boxes, and bug hotels. In the spring, we create nesting starter kits for wildlife emerging from hibernation and returning birds. And these consist of small sticks, collected dog fur and the like, which we leave around the hedgerows and trees in biodegradable caps. Through creating these different spaces within the churchyard, the community and visitors are seen daily enjoying the space for contemplation and play. His closing words are, our churchyard, while it contains the dead, is not dead itself, but full of life. Moving on to Barry Uniting Church. This is a local ecumenical partnership which was established in 2012 between the Methodist Church in Wales and a URC church. After the sale of both of the traditional buildings, they moved to a brand new site in the very industrial Barry Docks area. A community garden was created on the north of the site in 2013, and a temporary building was added in 2014. The congregation worshipped here until the bridge between centre, which incorporates the new church, opened in 2021. There is lots that they have achieved from a land and nature point of view. They have wildflower meadow, which includes species such as daisies, creeping buttercup, small cranesbill, birdfoot trefoil, wild flax, yarrow, red and white clover. They have created mounds, an amphitheatre type space. The mounds were reshaped in 2021 and the interfaces were planted with wildflower plugs. The subsoil has also been regenerated with coarser vegetation, although much has been left as it is attracting birds. The rear of the mounds were planted with over 100 saplings, including oak, birch, hawthorn, hazel, dog rose, goat willow, and field maple. On the southern edge of one of the mounds is a rock garden, created in this location to provide habitat for the slow worms, including a very large rock that was excavated during the building construction. This church painstakingly transplanted hundreds of slow worms from one site to another. On the eastern side of the garden is a bed planted with perennial plants, winter, spring and summer bulbs to provide all year-round interest. A second planted bed on the southern side has shrubs including a fig tree, cherry laurel, lots of other species which I can't pronounce, so I'm not even going to try, and a spirea. So all of these are perennials selected to be bee friendly. Also, there is an orchard meadow there where 5 heritage Welsh orchard apple trees grow. So all these different aspects and areas of their space helps nature and wildlife in different ways. This shows how creative you can be when planning, creating and managing your land, creating different zones for different purposes, both human and non-human.
Thanks, Delyth. I think it's back to me. I love that story of the slow worms being moved carefully, because it's so often about us slowing down enough to notice what it is that's on the land that's already, living there, and how we take care of it in our own grand plans, whatever they may be. So we're sharing these stories because this is what it looks like in practice. Beyond answering a survey, these are the stories of what eco churches are doing up and down the country, caring for nature all year round. There's so many church examples that we could share, but we've picked the couple that Del's shared and I'm going to share now, partly because we know their stories in a bit more detail. They're often churches that have got to silver or gold awards, but also just to try and illustrate the many different approaches that churches are taking to caring for and restoring land for nature and people, and how it can involve the wider community and the extent to which it's really embedded in their mission. And that's very much the case for the Wave in Littleham. It's a Baptist church that got a gold award earlier this year. And the links between their projects and activities really do convey this holistic approach to their mission. They write that we started this journey because we believe that caring for this world and looking after it is the primary vocation that God gave us when he created us. We wanted to do something that helped us be accountable and engage with this issue more actively. And the Eco Church journey was a brilliant way of focusing us and helping us explore this more openly and proactively. So while they could have moved from a silver to a gold award quite quickly, they worked for another 4 years to ensure that the church as a whole was taking caring for the environment more seriously, and then to ensure that the eco issues are a thread running through everything they do. So if that's proof that it's not just about an award, then that's them. They deliberately took longer to ensure it was really embedded in who they are. And their main focus was developing a community garden. It was built in 2 days by mostly local women, where they then meet throughout the year. And they've got a whole community ethos around food-based projects in particular. So they care for their community. They provide a community fridge. They are stopping food waste or trying to reduce food waste, whilst helping the community learn how they can be more sustainable, waste less, grow their own food, and see the importance of caring for this world. And they've also said they're seeing adults learning from the children who just get this and can't see why adults wouldn't take this earth care more seriously. And it's invoked some amazing cross-generational connections and input. And in the community and global section category of Eco Church, there are quite a few questions around food, how food is sourced. Is it as local as possible? Our church is providing opportunities and events that encourage a more inclusive experience of nature for all, getting outside and enjoying and learning to protect it. So food growing at whatever scale it takes, it can just be a couple of pots with some seeds, is a lovely way of beginning to do that. And then the next story is quite different. This is St Mary's in Braydock, a small rural parish in Cornwall. They achieved a gold award last year. They are very involved with a local school, and that's an example of a partnership that's enables the creation care message to be shared and multiplied. So through a link to the RE curriculum for church schools, the children have become involved with the church and engaged in many environmental activities, to the extent of making their own signage in the cemetery to describe the animals that live there. And I love this one. The common toad is a gardener's friend, sucking up slugs and snails. And then they also have an Understanding Christianity frieze. They've got the frieze in the church, and it's replicated on a bigger scale in the school. And they use that to tell the children, to tell the Bible story from creation to redemption from an environmental perspective. They've appointed their head teacher and the school eco squad as creation care champions to encourage their wider community to become more environmentally sustainable. But what struck me most is that while the head is on there, the head of the school is on their parish church council, they also have representatives from every 10-year age group, and you can see 2 of them in the photo. So this is really a church where relationships with God, the earth, and each other are almost indivisible. And then finally, I want to highlight St John's Methodist Church in Settle. It's a church that we tend to talk about a lot, even though they got their Gold Award a few years ago now, because they initially responded no to the Eco Church Survey land category. Do you have land? They said no, because 95% of their land was tarmacked, and the space obviously that the church building sits on. But one of my wonderful eagle-eyed colleagues pointed out that they did have some land around the building and there were some things that they could do, and there followed this amazing, inspiring transformation. So they started by noting the wildflowers around the building, which somebody was already recording, and realised that actually there was already life breaking through in what looked like a very unpromising site. So on a south-facing plot, they created a space to encourage their local congregation and the wider community to get outside and enjoy it. And within 6 months, they'd planted planters, seating, tables made from donated wooden pallets. And then the local Settle Primary School Green Team came to help with planting honeysuckle, clematis and winter jasmine, as well as decorating the side of the shed that you can see there. And they write that as the plants began to grow, so too did the interest, with the local play group visiting and a regular dementia group planting sunflower seeds and watching them grow each week until they were big enough to plant out in the garden. And they've seen what was previously considered a dead space come alive, with the glass cross in the back of the church wall, a striking visual feature and a focus for prayer. And they say that this project, more than any other, has really galvanized their church community. Hopefully these stories, if nothing else, are an encouragement of what is possible, because change is possible. Our news is almost a constant stream of all that's wrong with the world. Hopefully you're inspired to be part of some of what's right with the world. I'm sure you are already, by the very fact of you being here today and wanting to explore a bit further. Community, collaboration, creativity, these tiny seeds of hope, we have to keep sowing them and encouraging each other. We're not going to talk about the mechanics of EcoChurch today. As far as registering and going through the award, there's a lot of information on our website, and hopefully it's fairly intuitive. But I am going to hand over to Del, who's going to do a little bit of signposting of where you can find some of that further information.
Thank you. Yes, just briefly, I'm going to move on to some of the support and the help that is available while you're on your EcoChurch journey. If you've already started, just going to signpost to some of these sources of help. So we have assistance on the platform itself, and this is about navigating the EcoChurch platform. Some of the more technical aspects of registering an account, joining a church, submitting a survey, finding the status of an award application, that kind of thing. See the help guide, which lives on the EcoChurch platform. And then we have, for more general inquiries about EcoChurch and the programme, there is a more general help page on the EcoChurch website. So this covers broader questions and signposts to other pages on our website where people can find the information they need. If you've not started your EcoChurch journey yet, then the first step is to register as an individual, and then find and link to your church. As you said, we're not showing details of that today because we don't have the time. Next, I want to move on to the resources page. On the resources page, you can click through each of the survey categories, as you can see there, for individual resources sheets covering lots of the questions and helping you with sources of further information and case studies. Also on this page, you can see where you can get some promotional materials. There's children and youth resources, and also many of the resources are available in the Welsh language. Our stories page is also a really good place to browse, really worth visiting. Lots of inspiring stories that are happening elsewhere. And again, good place for you to browse and see what other people are doing. And then there's a summary page for each category of the survey. There's overview documents, as you can see here, helping you to situate and understand the 5 categories of church life that the survey explores. You can also view the survey questions on this summary page, both in English and Welsh. They are linked under each section as PDFs. That was a very quick tour of what you can get in terms of resources and help. And I'm just going to hand back over to Helen, who will round off our presentation.
Thanks, Delyth. And we've said a lot, we've shared a lot. So we are going to wrap up now, but I really just want to leave you with this vision and this invitation. There are 50,000 churches across the UK and 200,000 acres of land being held and managed by Christian denominations. So just imagine what we could do if our churches counted on nature all year round, even just doing some of the actions that we've referred to today and starting where you are. Imagine what your church could do, and it may well be that you're doing a lot already, which is fantastic. Otherwise, can you join us today and register your church and get started and see how far you can get and what you're doing already? So thank you very much, Diolch yn fawr, for joining us today. You can sign up to our newsletters here. We have a monthly A Rocha UK e-news, and we have EcoChurch Connect. That's our main newsletter for EcoChurch, and that's sent out about 4 or 5 times a year. And then you can you can explore our website, our A Rocha UK website, our EcoChurch website. There's lots of stories and information on there, and you can follow us on social media. Thank you very much. I think we now have some time for questions and responses. We don't necessarily have the answers, but we'll try to respond as best we can. Rue, you're muted.
There we go. Hi, Lissy, very happy for you to stop sharing now, if that's okay with you. And I'll pull up, thank you, pull up some of the comments and questions that came up. Jeremy asked, can you take part in EcoChurch with a purely nature stroke biodiversity focus, or do you need to cover other aspects of sustainability stroke energy stroke carbon, etc.? This actually prompted a very interesting discussion in the chat. Delyth commented it's deliberately holistic to cover all aspects of church life. There were various back and forth. Sarah came back with there are several categories, covering lots of areas, including buildings, worship, etc. And this is what's interesting. I thought, even if these aren't areas you're ready to engage with as a church, I would still really to encourage you to make use of the scheme and start with the land and nature categories. This will give you a really good framework for improving biodiversity on your land. So I just really wondered if you wanted to kind of continue that conversation. I thought that was a very interesting point. Obviously, a specifically biodiversity focused question.
No, it's a great question, and thanks to those of you that have done a great job of responding to it by the sound of it. It is absolutely, EcoChurch is designed to be holistic, because as hopefully we've explained, we can impact climate change and nature through so many different aspects of church life. But I think what I would say is start where you are and with what the way in is for you. And if as a church you're already engaged on your land and managing it for nature, that's great. Maybe little by little you can introduce some other aspects and get people to expand their vision outwards a little bit. Churches often start in different places, and there's often it's a jumping off point. So a church comes to mind, St Andrew's in Rugby. I mean, this is not something every church is going to go and do, but they went on a pilgrimage together to Assisi, and they came back and did a piece of community art, which is in their church. And for them, that was, that was their starting point. They went on from there to think a bit more about St Francis and to really embrace caring for the earth. They're now a Gold Church. There are churches, some churches got involved when COP was in the UK in Glasgow, and they, their jumping off point was more sort of political engagement, going and joining and being part of that. So yeah, start where you are, find a route in, and hopefully you can build into these other areas as well.
Thank you for sort of expanding on that. That's really interesting. Karen has pointed out to watch out for dog fur, which is from animals treated for fleas and ticks. And it's been found in nests where chicks have died because of the toxins. So that's just, thank you, Karen, for drawing our attention to that. I don't know if, again, if you have any response to that or any additional comments you want to make.
Oh gosh, no, except yeah, it's really good to be made aware of that sort of thing.
Yes.
I guess it's just being, yeah, mindful of how, in the same way that we look at our land and think ideally, we don't want pesticides and herbicides on there. Anything that's been treated has that risk of being passed on to wildlife. So it's a really good thought.
Yeah, it's a very helpful comment there. Thank you, Karen. We have a visitor from Papua in Indonesia, and I just really wanted to use that as a jumping off point. Welcome to you for talking about, just briefly touching, if you would, on obviously your A Rocha UK, but you've talked about the importance of contacts with other areas of the world, but just wondered if you wanted to just enlarge on that a little bit.
Sure. Sorry, I'm dominating here, Delyth. Please do feel free to come in if you want to. Yeah, I mean, I think I said we're in about 20 countries around the world, and at the heart of wherever those countries are, we're in France, Switzerland, Kenya, Ghana, New Zealand. Just trying to think, Costa Rica has recently joined. It's about conservation, nature, the church, and so it will look slightly different in each of those countries. But yeah, at the heart of who we are as A Rochas and in this wider family is caring for nature as Christians in our churches and working in partnership with others. So yeah, we're part of that worldwide family, though we are a separate individual charity in our own right. But yes, we share ideas, resources, learning with those families around the world. EcoChurch runs in a couple of other countries. It's in New Zealand. Some other countries have slightly different ways of have their own individual ways of engaging with churches. Of course, the church looks very different around the world in different countries. Is that enough on that?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's really interesting. It was just interesting to have somebody from Indonesia joining us, and to give you the opportunity to talk about A Rocha wider. I did have another question. Are there any costs attached to joining EcoChurch?
Great question. So we have deliberately over the years kept EcoChurch free at the point of entry, and we really want to keep it that way. We want every church that wants to access it and use the resources to be able to do that. But of course, there's a cost as an organisation to keep it running, and it's not just the cost of our sort of fairly small churches team, but we're an organisation of about 20 people. Many of us are part-timers, and that covers our churches and our land work. But yes, we have been encouraging over the last couple of years awarded churches to donate to our work so that we can keep it free for all. So we do encourage churches to make a donation as they are able. And then we're supported by some of the major denominations and trust funds, but we do rely on the support of churches and individual supporters as well.
No, thank you.
Yeah, we want to keep it free.
Yes, of course, as far as you are able,
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Trevor did ask about a reminder of what you were talking about was happening on 9th of July. Miriam said, yes, mass lobby of Parliament organised by the Climate Coalition, and Lissy very kindly put the link to the website in the chat. So if anybody is wanting to go along and join that lobby, there's the information. So thank you, Lissy, for doing that. And I think that's it. I just, oh, I'm sorry. I'm being pointed out that there, I've missed one in my chat. I'm just picked up something else. A very interesting in a comment from Charles. I'm wondering if there would be a better engagement if there was a focus on improving diet to reduce chronic illness, e.g. more omega-3 in diet and less omega-6. So that's obviously part of this issue that you were talking about, of different ways of people becoming involved, different ways in which people have their entry points, I think. So I wondered if that was something you'd like to talk about at all.
I think just to reinforce the message on entry points and yeah, people finding their own way with this. I mean, food and you know, what we eat, where it comes from, has a massive impact on nature and on ourselves, of course, and on our health. So these are very you know, issues that are interconnected. And I think, you know, part of I mean, I'd love to see in this country everyone having access to healthy grown, locally grown food that's good for us. So I mean, there's whole organizations out there, not least the Soil Association, working around food and the impact both on our health. You know, they have sustainable food programs for schools and so on, but also trying to influence our farming across the UK. So yeah, I mean, I could pull on a thread and we'd be here for there's probably another whole webinar with somebody else who's got more expertise than us. But absolutely diet, you know, important to our health and important to the health of the planet.
Yes, of course. Yes. Thank you. I mean, I do have to say that even Caring for God's Acre, in spite of its name, is a secular organisation. But we have found this a very inspirational webinar, particularly when you were talking about the interconnectedness of all these different threads of EcoChurch. Obviously, our particular focus is on the land and nature, and thank you for the section dealing with that, but to actually have an overview of all the different threads that are involved was really very, very interesting. So unless we have, oh, hang on, we have more messages, so excuse me if I just
Prue, there's a few comments about local authorities and engaging our local authorities engaging with churches and vice versa, and I think it was something that was touched on yesterday by Harriet as well, wasn't it?
It absolutely was.
Yeah, helping,
yes.
You know, what you can do in your own churchyard can help them tick their boxes, and they biodiversity plans themselves and the targets that they have to do. But I think from them supporting churches point of view, yes, somebody mentioned grants and moral support and everything. Yes, I would just advocate that people get in touch with them locally and see what support is out there, and the same with community groups, as we've mentioned, but specifically local authorities. There'll be expert officers in different departments that can maybe help them in their, you know, nature department, their biodiversity department, that can help and assist them as well. But it can be a mutually beneficial relationship when we can help them to tick off some of their tasks as well, really.
Thank you, Delyth. Thank you for reminding us that. And we're just looking through, Belinda has said that the Lancet Commission has published a very interesting global diet that's worth checking out. Karen has, following up really on what you've said, Delyth, that CFGA management plan that we wrote for them is helping them to discuss changes with their local authority. And Sarah, such vital work, participants may be interested in a resource we have written, which is free to download here. So that's the Congregational Church. There's a link there in the chat to their resource. Jackie has asked, can we get access to the ones we've missed, the webinars? Yes, absolutely. Any of the ones that you have registered for, you'll be sent a link automatically. If you did happen to miss yesterday's, do please email us at inquiries@cfga, and I'll ask Anna to put that email address in the chat again, and we can send you the link from yesterday. The links that we're sending out will actually be live until the end of June, and then, as I mentioned in my introduction, in due course they will all go up onto the Church of England website. I think I've picked everything up. Miriam will be at the mass lobby, so hopefully lots of people will be joining her.
Is it helpful if we put up the final slide? I'm aware you've got your list.
That would be very helpful.
Webinars.
Thank you. That would be very helpful. So there we are. That's the full programme of this Land and Nature webinar series. So do please register for any that you've missed. As I mentioned before, you can go on the Caring for God's Acre website and register there. Hang on, we've still got 3 new messages. I'm just going to check those out. And there we are. Thank you, Delyth, for your thank you. And yes, we've really found this a very inspirational talk, and I'm sure all our participants have as well. So Delyth and Helen and Lucy in the background, thank you so much.
Thank you, Prue.
Thank you.
Anna in the background. And yeah,
Anna in the background.
Thanks so much to all of you for being with us.